Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Also, it is on the radio in Las Vegas on 101.5 KDAWN. And starting next week, we'll no longer be on the bet. Next week, 7 a.m. Sunday. So when you get up early in anticipation of that Raiders versus Patriots game, you can catch the show on KXNT in Las Vegas. That's right. Another station added to the lineup here as we switch over to the AM. So we'll be on AM, FM. You can catch us wherever you want there as well. So make sure you catch the show there, as well as 10 p.m. on Saturday night over on 101.5 KDAWN. I am Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my partner, Mo Moton. He's senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, also the Raiders daily columnist at sportsnot.com. You can follow him on X at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. Don't forget, subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Also, if you're watching us on video, subscribe there. Give us that thumbs up. Yay. And also hit that subscription and the notifications bell, right? That way you know every time we have a new video. Well, the Raiders made their roster. By the way, got to give a shout out, Mo. If you notice my sweatshirt, right?
That's cool.
That is my alma mater, Carlsbad High School, out in San Diego County, Carlsbad, California. They take on one of the rivals when I was there as well, which is Oceanside. Remember we talked about all the Samoans? That's where all the Samoans are in Oceanside as well. That's where Junior Sal played. You might have heard of him. So anyway, shout out to Thad McNeil, former classmate of mine who was the head coach there. Lancers have started off 1-0, and they face Oceanside and El Camino a week after. So a lot of North County fun going on Friday Night Lights. Anyway, let's get into the Raiders. Mo, we have reaction to the trimming of the roster, of course, on Tuesday. The deadline was 4 p.m. And in typical Raider PR fashion, they waited 2.5 hours or 2 hours, whatever it was, behind the rest of the league to tell us who they were keeping. So as those of us working in the journalism space, you want to get your work done, and we had to wait a little bit, but hey, we finally got it as usual. And the reaction to it is very interesting. You look at the initial roster, Mo, this is going to change today, tomorrow, the rest of the week. I really believe that. So if you're listening to us and something else has happened in the meantime, that's because there's going to be a lot of movement. Okay. So don't fret too much on that one. But you look at this, I mean, clearly a youth movement here. Mo, 9 rookies, several second and third year players making it as well. There's also some major concern you and I talked about before we went on the air as well on the defensive side of the ball, where the Raiders have serious depth issues and some question marks really on who's even going to start over there at this point. That's why I believe moves are imminent. But let me get your initial reaction. I wasn't surprised by too many. Some people surprised by Tommy Mellott. Some people surprised, of course, by the fact that they did not IR Aiden O'Connell. We'll talk about that in a minute. Laki Tasi obviously is a big risk for this team to put on the waiver wire. He was looked at across the league as a player who's been impressing folks as a developmental project. But Mo, your surprises, any shocks for you, or any big concerns that jump out based on what we saw out of the Raiders with their initial 53-man?
Nothing major shocked me at all. There were no cuts where I thought, oh, I didn't see that guy getting cut. I did want to see Greedy Vance make the roster. I thought he played well in the preseason. The Raiders' slot cornerback depth is shaky at best. Darnay Holmes didn't really stand out much at all this offseason. It was Jeremy Chin in the slot, and he is your best slot option right now. So thought Greedy Vance had a shot, but I guess with Caillou Blue Kelly coming along now, Caillou Blue Kelly now has a hamstring injury. I guess with Caillou Blue Kelly coming along, he could play inside and outside. Probably the numbers game went against Greedy Vance Jr. at that point. They did take a gamble with Laki Tasi. I think it was Ryan McFadden of ESPN said that several other teams were interested in Laki Tasi. So, that's a huge gamble. I know he wasn't going to start. Jack Sparge-Johnson is your right guard. Dylan Palmer is your left guard. I get it. But this is a guy that you can develop, and teams looking at what the Eagles did with their left tackle, You're looking at Laki Tasi, also a former rugby player. It's a copycat league. So teams are probably looking at Laki Tasi and thinking we could do the same thing with him as the Eagles did with their left tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. But you look at the situation I call the youth movement, Mo. Of the 11 draft picks of the Raiders, only 2 of them were cut. And you mentioned both Cam Miller and Tommy Mellott. So they were both 6-round picks. So the Raiders, as of today, as of time of recording the show, I shouldn't even say as of today because I think it'll change later today. But that's where we're at with that. Now, some of these other guys could end up going. But the Aiden O'Connell thing was interesting. Do you think that maybe they have some hope that he'll be back faster than that? Now, at this point, he's the 3rd quarterback. And but if he's out 6 to 8 weeks as they first initially projected, then you don't have that 3rd quarterback unless Cam Miller makes it through waivers, of course, and then you'd have to put Aiden O'Connell on IR later. I think it's just flexibility. I think he's going to go on IR. They're just waiting to see what they do with the rest of the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that they'll see what they get, and then based on who's available, what they get, he'll move to an injured list because there's no point in keeping your 3rd injured quarterback on the active roster. So not freaking out about that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense, as you mentioned. Now, if you look at some other notable releases, of course, Tyrell Edmunds, the veteran they brought in, signed in August. They cut him, of course. Now that leaves the Raiders. Mo, we've been talking about safety a lot on this show, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the 4 safeties with Chin, Harper, Palomao, and Chris Smith II, again, depth here. There were a couple, I think, notable safeties cut from other teams. So I would imagine we'll see a safety and at least one cornerback signed to this roster as quickly as possible, as soon as they can find somebody that they can strike a deal with.
Not a lot of experience at the safety position outside of Jeremy Chin, as far as starts are concerned on the resume. I know Isaiah Palomar was a starter last year, but he only has 14 starts on his resume. He's still a young player. So with Tyrell Edmunds getting cut, Lonnie Johnson Jr. going on IR with the broken fibula, JT Woods, who played cornerback, but he was a safety with the Chargers, also getting cut. Trey Taylor also getting cut. I would assume that they're going to, they would address that position at, bringing in an insurance policy, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about too that cornerback position, and you mentioned earlier, and we talked about Mike Hilton, released by the Dolphins. He's that nickel guy there, and that could be maybe a fit for the Raiders to bring in some depth and some experience there. So we'll see. Were you surprised Charles Snowden was kept over Andre Carter?
Not at all. I felt like I know Andre Carter had a good offseason, preseason, but so did Charles Snowden.
Yeah,
so
they both did, right?
They both had a pretty good off season, so I guess it's just a matter of preference from the coaching staff on who they wanted to keep there. But Snowden had a pretty good off season too. I don't think people should overlook that.
Yeah, and no surprise as well that the 2025 undrafted free agents, none of them made the initial 53-man roster. Now, somebody could be signed after the fact to the practice squad, so we'll see as well. And you mentioned the Laki Tasi thing. To me, that was the biggest surprise. Although, you have to take risks at times, and I think that's the biggest risk they're taking there as well. But we look at additions. We talked about cornerback. We talked about safety. But also defensive line, even though they're still working on the Jakobi Meyers deal and they signed Amari Cooper, I still think a wide receiver could be in play, as well as some defensive line help and possibly who knows what else. I mean, linebacker, they seem okay with linebacker. Some of the players that we thought might be on the bubble were not, with Lindenberg. And of course, the linebacking core to me just needs a little bit of depth. You're counting on guys, reclamation projects, of course, to come back and really score there with Devin White and so on. So that, to me, again, I just keep focusing on the defense. I think the offense is in pretty good condition, and the question marks there are obviously a lot less. But on that defensive side of the ball, Mo, they got work to do. I just don't think they're going to be able to address all of it this season. So I think we're in for a really up and down season with this defensive unit.
You had to expect that. You can bring in a new coaching staff, mostly a new coaching staff. I know Patrick Graham is still there and Rob Leonard, but mostly a new coaching staff led by a new head coach, new front office. Things don't get fixed in one off season. Even the Commanders, who had an amazing leap from the bottom of the NFC East to being in an NFC Championship game, they didn't fix all their holes in one off season, right?
No.
They last off season they didn't fix. They had some holes. This off season they wound up trading for Deebo Samuel, trading for Laramie Tunsil, so they were still turning over their roster. It's just that they were way ahead of schedule. A lot of people didn't have them where they were. But the Raiders it's gonna like any other team, it's gonna take multiple off seasons to patch up all the holes on the roster. And I would assume that, I know we're looking way ahead, but next off season is going to be heavy on defensive back, is my assumption.
Absolutely. And listen, I understand fans are excited. They're seeing progress, especially offensively. It's going to be a fun season to watch this team, in my view. But you can't get there in one off season. You just can't. So when I hear from our callers, who of course we'll hear from in the third segment today, they get frustrated. Well, why aren't we doing this? Well, you can't do it all at once. You just don't have the resources or the ability and the roster flexibility to do that. But a couple names I want to throw at you, Mo, before we got about 3 minutes here before the break. Possible fits for this defense. The two names that popped out to me were Chad Mama from the Jacksonville Jaguars, who was released, as well as Indianapolis Colts cornerback Juju Brents. What about those two? You see a fit for them in the Raiders?
I like Juju Brents because he's young, has some potential. I think he was a former second-round pick, I want to say.
Second.
Obviously, the Colts brought in Charvarius Ward. They bolstered their secondary, so he became expendable. Hasn't been healthy very much. He's been on the IR, so there is that. But
yeah,
the Raiders have shown that they're willing to kick the tires on some recent early round picks. So we'll like to see Juju Brents with the Raiders. Matt Holler, my buddy over at Bleacher Report, pointed out that he's a Pete Carroll type cornerback, 34-inch length arm. So he has the length to fit in that mold and potentially be something in Las Vegas, assuming that if they're interested in him. So I like the Juju Brent suggestion. I know he's older, but they have a young safety group. Tony Jefferson's available. Played pretty well with the Chargers. Older safety, I know, I get it, but he can play multiple positions. And last year, people counted him out because he had retired, came back, and actually was an important cog in that Chargers secondary. We'll be surprised if the Raiders go with experience at the safety spot.
Yes, and that was when I saw that hit the wire yesterday. If you remember, I texted you. I said, this is a good. I think would be a very good pickup for the Raiders with Jefferson to be able to. I mean, you have nothing to lose. I mean, you bring him in, and if he does well, and with that experience, the inexperience, I should say, back at safety, it just makes so much sense. He knows the division as well, and obviously the Raiders know him, even though it's a new coaching staff. Patrick Graham knows him too, from having watched him. So I think that would make a lot of sense. I'd be shocked if we don't see that already, if it hasn't already happened by the time the show airs. So we'll see how that all runs down. But it's all good. All right. Well, there you go. Not a ton, like you said, not a lot of drama with this 53 man. I mean, some people will create drama out of anything. So I'm sure there are people, although Dylan Laube made the roster, so fans are happy with that. Of course, we had a situation in Carolina where our old friend Hunter Renfrow was released, and Raider fans going gaga over that, saying, go sign him, go sign him, go sign him. I get it, but I would rather see the Raiders sign defensive backs. I don't know about you, Mo, but defensive backs. So we'll see what happens there. All right, we're going to step aside for our first break here on Silver and Black today. When we come back, we're going to talk about what did Amari Cooper, what did Kenny Pickett have to say in their first day as Las Vegas Raiders. So we'll get some of that in, and then we'll discuss a little bit about the impact that they will have on this roster. And then in segment number 3, we're going to get to your phone calls. This is Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio, 101.5 KDON, and of course on KXNT. Don't go anywhere. It's Mo and Scott. We're coming back real soon. And 1. Welcome back. Segment number 2 of this edition of Silver and Black today. The Raiders roster is set. Until it's not. They're going to make some moves, but we're here to talk about that. They've already made some moves. We're going to talk about that in segment number 2. You're with Scott Gulbransen and Mo Moton. We are your friendly and knowledgeable most of the time hosts. We're wrong a lot, right a lot. And hey, whether you like it or not, we're here and we're talking at you. We're talking Raiders football. Of course, we're an Odyssey Sports Regional Podcast, heard on 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas, as well as KXNT starting next week. Both stations. Yes. And we are here. And who are we? Scott Gulbransen, as I mentioned. Mo Moton. Mo's the senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. He knows a little bit about football in the NFL. You can follow him on X at Mo Moton, MOEMOTON. I'm at LV Gully. Mo, the Raiders, of course, brought Amari Cooper back 10 years after they drafted the young man. They bring him back as a free agent. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's returning on a 1-year deal, his 11th season. He spoke to the media after practice on Tuesday, and he kind of had his theme was, I want to finish what I started. He turned down the 49ers. He turned down a couple teams. He had opportunities to sign elsewhere. Instead, he said, and this is very interesting, winning is important to me. I see the opportunity. I wanted to go somewhere where I could see the vision and where it's going. He also mentioned the fact that they had Geno Smith and what was going on in Las Vegas, Pete Carroll, clearly. And so you look at the signing, and I know a lot of fans are mixed feelings about it or don't like it or love it either way. But I think he's got some left in the tank. He had a tough year last year, but you had to remind, I think, 1,000 people the other day on X about his injury last year, because he had a dip in numbers significantly last year playing for 2 different teams. But when you look at what he has and what he can be on this roster, Mo, talk a little bit about what you think he's got left in the tank. And then number 2, tell me what you think his role will be.
I think he has a lot left in the tank. I expect he and Dante Thornton Jr. to rotate on the boundary. Dante Thornton Jr. is lined up mostly on the outside this offseason. That's where Cooper lines up. Assuming Jakobi Meyers is still there, he'll line up in the slot, and then you'll have Trey Tucker also on the outside. Jack Besh can move inside and outside, of course. And then you have Brock Bowers also who can play in the slot. But Cooper will line up on the outside, alternating snaps with Dante Thornton Jr. And you said it, Scott. I had to remind people that Cooper played with a wrist injury last year, and it was for about a half season. He only missed 3 games, 2 for the wrist injury and 1 for personal reasons. But he battled that wrist injury and played through it for a lot of his time with the Cleveland Browns before they traded him to the Buffalo Bills. So for the people that look at his numbers and go, oh, he's washed, right? They go, oh, he's 31 years old, down year last year, career low catches, receiving yards. He's washed. There's always context to it, right? So he's moving in the middle of the season. I just said the Browns traded him to the Bills. So he's moving in the middle of the season. That, you know, anytime you're moving like that mid-season, it can be tough on a play, even a veteran. I talked about the injury. I want to see a healthy Amari Cooper play before I make the determination, oh, he's cooked, as the kids say, right? Because 2 years ago, just 2 years ago, Scott, Amari Cooper had 72 catches for 1,250 yards, 5 touchdowns. That 1,250 yards was a career high. Just 2 years ago, by the way. And he did that with 5 different quarterbacks. And now those quarterbacks are NFL quarterbacks because he played, other than Joe Flacco and Deshaun Watson, PJ Walker, Jeff Driscoll, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I wanted the Raiders to look into as a backup quarterback, but he is a backup quarterback. That year he put up career numbers. He played with 3 backup quarterbacks, and you know how bad Deshaun Watson has been in recent years. So before you throw Amari Cooper away and say he's cooked, he's washed up, let's see him healthy. Let's see what he does with Geno Smith, because I think he's ready for a bounce back year.
And look, I don't mind people having opinions different than mine, because I'm not always right. And sometimes I have my opinion and you don't like it, and that's cool. No problem. But do some freaking homework, right? Just like the people arguing about Jakobi Meyers. He deserves top 5 money. What? Are you kidding me? You look at Amari Cooper, just to put this in the context, because Mo, people don't look stuff up. You talk about Cooper's 24 season, like you said, we'll throw that out just because he ends up at 500 and some yards, injuries, he missed games. We know what happened, got traded, the whole thing. But in 4 of the previous 5 seasons before that, so you go back to with the Cowboys in 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023, 2021, he had 865. Every other season in Dallas, he had over 1,000 yards, and then he had the 2 seasons over 1,000 yards with the Browns without quarterbacks. So when you start talking about receiver, I think, yes, he will, as you said, swap time with Dante Thornton, but he very quickly could be the Raiders' number 1 receiver. He's put up the numbers. If he's fully healthy, as he says he is in this press conference, then he is. But you look up those numbers, and look, I'm not saying I don't like Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers is a fine wide receiver, and I think he deserves a raise. I just don't think he deserves top wide receiver money after having just that 1,000-yard season with the Raiders. Just put the brakes there. So this situation in flux, I don't think people are excited enough about Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I get a mixed reaction from Raiders Twitter. There are a lot of people that are psyched about this, and there were some, including, I believe, Murph, was bringing up, hey, why not Amari Cooper? And I kind of shut it down as I don't think it's going to happen, because Amari Cooper did not seem happy to be a Raider the first time around. But it's obviously very different this time around. He, as you said, he chose the Raiders over the 49ers, which I thought was very interesting when he noted the ability to win football games. The Raiders had 2 winning seasons in the last 20 plus years, right? And he's been with the Raider organization, so he's seen a lot of the ins and outs of why they've lost a lot of games. So I thought it was very intriguing to hear him say, well, I think I can win here with an organization that, let's be honest, hasn't won much in recent years. And it just goes to show the power of Pete Carroll and Geno Smith having a legitimate quarterback, a legitimate starting quarterback in place, and 2, an accomplished head coach. It brings, I know Amari Cooper is a bit past his prime, but it can attract other prime free agents as time goes on when you have those 2 leading the way. So I think Amari Cooper saying that it's a big point. It's a big feather in Pete Carroll and Geno Smith's cap.
And we talked about this during the coaching search, right? Which was bringing the right guy. And we also used this going back to last season, Mo, as a criticism against why Antonio Pierce might have not been the best hire. I'm not trying to go back and revisit history other than just to talk about the importance of and the impact of when you have a coaching staff, not just the head coach, coaching staff that has that kind of gravitational pull. And you're seeing it here. This is why guys like Geno Smith are willing to accept a trade to go to the Raiders and feel good about it and sign an extension, and Amari Cooper to come in and so on. So you see this, and it really is significant. And then don't forget, he's hiding back there. And yesterday he was a meme because of the outfit he wore. He looked like the guy from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the villain, Tom Brady. He's back there too. Don't think that doesn't matter either. I know Raider fans aren't thinking about Tom Brady every day, but it matters. This organization, when I was on Mark Schlereth's show, and we talked about it, which you saw here also on our channel, he talked about that. And I always say the adults in the room, and he talked about just how this organization is viewed much more in a positive light since all of the changes that occurred. Now, this is only step 1. As you mentioned, you can't get this team from 4 wins to Super Bowl champion in one off season. I know some of you out there think that could happen, and that's good. Keep it up.
Murph.
But the realistic look at this is it's going to take multiple years, but it's all headed in the right direction. Will there be mistakes? Sure. There's always mistakes, but certainly Amari Cooper coming on board. Now, the trade for Kenny Pickett was another one where I had to remind people. I felt like I was you because I was doing it nicely at first, and then I had some people who were just crazy, and I had to do what I had to do. But for a 5th-round draft pick, they get Kenny Pickett. I just want to remind people, Kenny Pickett is not the franchise quarterback they're traded for. He's not the starting quarterback. He's not the future of the Raiders at quarterback. They wanted an experienced backup quarterback that had a little bit of functional M-O-E ability, right? And so they go get Kenny Pickett for a 5th-round draft pick. I reminded people that roughly after a year or 2, roughly 50% of those players drafted in the 5th round are even on an NFL roster. It is a 50-50 bet on any 5th-round draft pick. So the compensation sent for Kenny Pickett, to me, no brainer. Some people defending the 5th-round draft pick and how that matters. I reminded people, as we talked about on the show that we never aired because we had to re-record it, the Raiders in 25 years, 14 of those years didn't even have a 5th-round pick. And out of those 5th-round picks, you're talking about Hunter Renfrow, Shane Leckler. That's it. Like, players that matter, okay? I'm talking about the last 25 years now. Somebody's going to tell me Lester Hayes. Yes, that was 1977, 48 years ago. 48 years ago. I was a little kid then, believe it or not. Yes, I was alive. So, Mo, my point is the Kenny Pickett deal, I think a very good deal for this team, and a good player comes in and can fit that mold.
Yeah, let's also remember the Raiders are going to get comp picks for the talent that they lost in free agency, losing Nate Hobbs, losing Robert Spillane and Mark Epps and all of those guys that they lost. They're going to get comp picks to replace that day 3 pick anyway. So
right.
I think John Spytek doing the math looks at it and says, we give up a pick, we're going to get multiple picks probably. It's not that big of a loss as you would think for the people who love draft picks. But it's, for me, the biggest takeaway is not the Raiders overpaid or whether they overpaid or not. It's Aiden O'Connell's time as the Raiders' primary backup quarterback is done.
Yep.
Kenny Pickett and Aiden O'Connell will be the same age in September. Aiden O'Connell's birthday is September 1st. He'll be 27. Kenny Pickett is 27. Kenny Pickett, as you said, more mobile, has the starting experience that Aiden O'Connell also has. Their numbers are similar. Aiden O'Connell's numbers are better, but Kenny Pickett's numbers very similar. And we've seen Kenny Pickett be a serviceable starting quarterback in Pittsburgh. Now, he was mostly a backup in Philadelphia, but we've seen it before. And I also say this again. Kenny Pickett was playing under an offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, in Pittsburgh, who is no longer in the NFL. Right. Kenny Pickett is now going to have Chip Kelly in Las Vegas. He's going to have his best offensive coordinator other than, playing in Philadelphia for a bit. But he's going to have a much better offensive coordinator in Las Vegas than he had in Pittsburgh. Again, Matt Canada is not an NFL offensive play caller. Think Luke Getsy, right? So you're going to probably see him develop Kenny Pickett into a more serviceable play. You might see better out of him if he gets these fill-in spots in blowouts, or let's hope this doesn't happen. Let's hope Geno Smith is healthy. But if Geno Smith gets hurt and Kenny Pickett has to play, you might see a little better. You might see better play out of Kenny Pickett under Chip Kelly than you saw when he was under Matt Canada in Pittsburgh.
No question. And again, he's not the starting quarterback. He's a lot of people. Of course, we talked about it on our Tuesday special show about Hendon Hooker, who was released by the Lions. He still has not been picked up. Now, if they move O'Connell to the IR, I wouldn't be surprised if they picked up one of those young quarterbacks. Kyle McCord was cut, right? Some of these guys that are familiar and would fit in Chip Kelly's system. I wouldn't be surprised that they sign one of those guys as they make it through waivers. And remember, the Raiders are number 6 in the waiver order. So they have a good position. So they're able to maybe snag one of these guys as a third developmental quarterback, because that's what they don't have right now is a developmental quarterback. If they think more highly of someone than Cam Miller, of course, if Cam Miller makes it through, they'll probably bring him back in on the practice squad. But Kenny Pickett as a backup, you should feel pretty good about that as a guy who can come in 1 or 2 games. If Geno Smith, knock on wood, were to have a minor injury and miss time, or even for a couple series, if somebody gets in his face and he gets shook up a little bit, not a big deal. But I think it was a good move by the Raiders. All right, we're going to step aside for our final break. When we come back, we're going to get to your phone calls here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast on the radio, 101.5 KDON and KXNT in Las Vegas. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Home stretch here on Silver and Black Today. Thanks for being with us. We are an Odyssey Sports Original podcast, of course, also on the radio in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's not Nevada, for those of you out there. Nevada. Thank you. And you can hear us there on 101.5 KDON on the FM side. On the AM side, starting next Sunday morning at 7 a.m. as you tailgate early. That's right. Get those Modelos cracking at 7 and listen to Silver and Black Today on KXNT. 1040 there. All right. Scott Gulbransen, Mo Moton back with you. We're going to get to your phone calls here as well. Mo, we talked about having a few days here before the madness begins as the season starts coming up later next week, a week from today, actually, as we have a special Thursday night game. And then the Raiders, of course, playing on Sunday in New England, which will be an early start on the West Coast, a 10 a.m. start for you and I over on the Eastern time zone at 1 p.m., which is great because we do a lot of Raider stuff late at night usually. This will be nice, though. But A lot of callers want to talk about what's going on with this team, so we'll get to them. But Mo, are you ready for the season, man? Are you ready for the madness? Your duties at Bleacher Report, Sports Not here. You got no videos you're doing every week. Tell everybody about those so they know how to keep track of you.
So during the season, I'll be going live after games, after Raider games, and also have VOD segments over on Bleacher Report where I'll be talking about a specific topic. This week, obviously, it was about roster cuts. I also dropped a video about Amari Cooper on Wednesday and basically said what I said today on this show and said Amari Cooper isn't washed. If you look at his recent years, I know you want to look at the box score numbers from last year, but there's context to that. Sports Night, as you mentioned, I'm dropping a daily piece over there on what the happenings every day going on around the team, whether it's a player who maybe requested a trade, Jakobi Meyers, player who's hurt, what Pete Carroll's talking about, how they're sculpting their roster. So I'm on multiple platforms virtually every day dropping Raiders content. MOEMOTON on Twitter to keep track of all of it.
That's right. And we told you about our Silver and Black Today listener fantasy football league. We're going to be doing some segments. It might be a little smaller show each week on that, where we'll bring on some of the players via video as well. So they'll come on and they'll be able to talk trash with Mo and I or do whatever as well. So we'll be able to do that. Mo and I made a trade early this week. We traded some running backs, tight end. That's right. So we got some action going. We'll tell you a little bit about more next time on that. But we're getting ready for the big season. I also have my cigar lounge buddies. We have our draft on Sunday, so I'm getting ready for that. That's always fun. It is a keeper league, so a little different strategy there. It's fun though. I love doing it. All right, we're gonna get into your phone calls. We got plenty. First up is our buddy Murph. This is a couple days old, but I wanted to make sure we get our friend Murph from Raiders Fan Radio first up here. Here he is.
Hello, Scott and Mo. It's seventh-time caller, your old buddy Murph. I'm still waiting on my sixth-time caller pin. I guess that must have got lost in the mail. But as you can hear, my voice is still on recovery mode after being out in Vegas this past weekend to enjoy an amazing tailgate experience and also preseason game against the hated Santa Clara 49ers. But first off, I want to thank Scott for your support of not only Raider Dad, but our nonprofit, the One Nation Foundation, supporting Raiders-related charities. Brother, we can't thank you enough for always showcasing us on your platform and just everything else that you've done also behind the scenes. Thank you incredibly for that. And for those of you that caught the live broadcast, I apologize. The audio was a little rough, man. It's nasty work, as the kids say, trying to do a wireless broadcast from a tailgate with all the background noise. But anyways, for those of you that hung in there and watched it, I appreciate you as well, and I appreciate your support in Raider Nation of our nonprofit, the One Nation Foundation. Well, hey, but on to some Raider stuff. As your official Twitter correspondent, the streets are pretty mean out here today, boys, because we've got a lot of discussion around acquiring a pass rusher, whether that be Micah Parsons, whether that be Trey Hendrickson, I think Raider Nation is looking for a high-profile compliment to Max Crosby, because without it, I think our secondary is going to be challenged a little more frequently than maybe we want. So I want to get your boys' thoughts, if you haven't even already talked about it, around what do you like? Is this just fan stuff? Like, is this playing, Madden 26 with our thumbs on our phones, or is there actually something real out there around the Raiders acquiring a complimentary pass rusher? And if so, would that cost us Malcolm Kuntz? And would we even be willing to do that? I'm not so sure that a young guy on a proven contract, I know he's only a few years younger than Hendrickson, but he's inexpensive on a proven deal. So anyway, just want to get your thoughts. I love you guys. We'll talk soon. Peace.
All right, there's Murph. That is from last week, but I wanted to get it on because we haven't been on since then. And thank him and the folks at Raider Dad, Josh Camonite, and of course the team over at Raiders Fan Radio for all the work that they do at charity. We don't deserve the thanks; they deserve the thanks there as well. But we know Trey Hendrickson, obviously, since that time has been signed. Micah Parsons, the hot deal that we're hearing as of recording the show is perhaps to Green Bay and some kind of wallop of a massive trade. Mo, I don't see many options for the Raiders out there for a move or anybody who was cut that would really solidify the team at end or even in the front based on what they have. I think they're going to go with what they have. Now, something can come up, but I don't see a lot of options.
I have one name.
Oh,
and it's a name that's been brought up, but I actually think it makes sense. Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney is a pretty good run defender. He's not going to get you 10 sacks at this point in his career. He may get you 5 to 7 sacks. But the Raiders need help shoring up the edge when it comes against the run. We've seen time and time again. I know it's the preseason. They got backups out there, but we see time and time again teams gash them on the outside. Jadeveon Clowney can help fix that problem if they're looking to add another edge rusher. So I would be all for it. He's at the stage of his career. He's not going to cost you a lot of money. And he can rotate him in with Malcolm Kuntz and Tyrell Wilson. So then you'll have Max Crosby leading the group. You'll have Jadeveon Clowney that gives you that insurance there. And you have 2 young guys who are looking to prove themselves this year. So I think that would be a pretty firm, strong group right there.
There you go. Murph, good call, man. Appreciate it. Anything to take pressure off that back end would be welcomed for sure. All right, now we're going out to our buddy Dominique, good friend of the show. Here he is.
Hey, Scott and Mo. This is Dominique from the Show Me State. How you guys doing? Trading a 5th-round pick for Kenny Pickett, I believe, is just terrible. I'd much rather have a guy like Hendon Hooker or Snoop Huntley. Though, in my opinion, those guys are better than Kenny Pickett, and you won't have to give up draft capital to get those guys. So that move I absolutely hate. The Jakobi Meyers thing, I mean, Jakobi Meyers is a great number 2 receiver. He's not a number 1 receiver. So I wouldn't pay him number 1 receiver money. If he is wanting that type of money, I think it is best to move on from him. I would send him to the highest bidder, honestly. I'd love to have a 4th-round pick for him. Realistically, we probably would get a 5th. But I'm perfectly okay with trading him if he wants that type of money. He's just, like I said, he's a great number 2, but he's not a number 1 receiver to where you pay him that kind of money. Just let me know what you guys think. But, I mean, bringing back Amari Cooper, it's fine. He is, he has declined, and I do think he is on the decline. We know he has the dropsies. But I believe it's for $3.5 million, and it can get up to $6 million with incentives. I think that's a cheap deal. I don't mind it. But overall, just let me know what you guys think about Kenny Pickett. I know you're going to talk about Jakobi Meyers, I'm sure, and then bringing back Amari Cooper. But yeah, the Kenny Pickett thing, I just don't understand that at all. It makes no sense to me. I'll be listening as always. Appreciate you guys, Scott and Mo. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right, Dominique, one of our favorite guys out there. But I got to take issue, Mo. What I liked Huntley too. We've talked about him since the Raiders were in the market. But he says he's much better than Kenny Pickett. I look at the numbers. The numbers don't say that. They just don't. I mean, Kenny Pickett's got twice as many yards. Now, I know Huntley had that 1 year. But if you look at what Kenny Pickett did, he had 2 years starting in Pittsburgh, right? 13 games, 12 games, 2,400 yards, 2,000 yards. He's got a total of 4,700 yards, 15 touchdowns against 14 interceptions. Huntley's got 2,700 yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So I understand, hey, maybe you like one player better than the other, and that's okay. But I don't think one player is significantly better than the other, except that Huntley can run the ball better.
Here's the thing where I wanted Huntley too. I felt like Huntley would have been the better option. The Browns let him go. And Huntley, by the way, it seems like he's been around forever. He's only 27. He's also 27.
Right, he's young.
Pickett and Aiden O'Connell will be 27. I preferred Huntley. Clearly, the Raiders had a different opinion. I will say, though, Kenny Pickett had more time to start than Huntley, so Kenny Pickett's numbers are going to be a lot better than Huntley. So I wouldn't compare passing numbers and volume numbers because of Pickett's experience as a starter. Huntley's been a backup for his entire career, and I thought that's why he would be perfect for this job. He's been a backup, a fill-in for his entire career. He did it for the Baltimore Ravens when Lamar Jackson would get hurt. He did it for the Miami Dolphins. Took him a couple of games, but he found his footing in Miami and did pretty well. But the Raiders went in a different direction. Fine. I'll say that. I will say this, and this was said, I said this on the show that we scrapped because it was outdated before we put it out, but there is a Kenny Pickett connection to Brendan Hunt, who the Raiders hired to be their vice president of player personnel. Brendan Hunt was in Pittsburgh as a pro scout when the Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round. If you remember, the Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett to Philadelphia. Guess who was in Philadelphia in their front office in their scouting department when that happened? Brendan Hunt. So Brendan Hunt obviously sees something in Kenny Pickett because he was there in Pittsburgh with him. He was in Philly with him, and now they reunite again in Las Vegas. So, Dominique, there is your connected dots connection between Kenny Pickett and why it made sense for the Raiders. Brendan Hunt is your guy.
Yeah, and listen, Snoop Huntley I would have been fine with that choice too. To your point, I think either one of those candidates is fine. That's why I don't necessarily like one over the other. I think they're both the same kind of mold, and it just comes down to personal choice which one you like better. All right, we're gonna get to one call. Oh, wait, excuse me. We're gonna get to a few more calls here. Here we go. We're gonna get to Gen X Raider.
Hi Scott. Hi Mo. This is Gen X Raider. Hope you guys are doing well. So I've watched all 3 preseason games, and my overall assessment is looks like the first team offense will move the ball and score points, but whether the points will be touchdowns or field goals, we'll see. The defense looks shaky from time to time. They have made some plays here and there. There's not much depth on offense, especially now that AOC is hurt. But especially on defense, I don't see a lot of depth, and they need help. And now I hear that Caillou Blue Kelly has a hamstring issue, which could linger. And Darren Munford looked horrible for most of the preseason. And if he makes the team, I'll be very concerned for any quarterback that's playing while he's on the line, if he's on the line. And as far as quarterbacks that they're looking for now that AOC is hurt, heard talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He was just waived, I think, this weekend by the Eagles. Don't know much about him, but I know he played with Chip Kelly, I think in UCLA. And then there's also been talk about Mitch Trubisky or Mike White. And also heard the name of Jeff Driscoll being mentioned, but I'm not sure if that's going to be a possibility. But Mitch Trubisky or Mike White seem interesting to me. I followed some Jets games being up here in the Northeast, and he looked really good a few years back, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to pick up the offense that quickly. So it looks like DTR, Dorian Thompson, will be the number 1 candidate. And finally, a big request to the Raiders team, please, please, please beat the Patriots week 1. One of my most hated sports teams. Living with Patriots fans up here in Massachusetts has really taken a toll for almost 25 years, or at least until most recently when Brady left the team and they came down to earth. So just win this first game, please. All right. That's all. Thanks for listening, and have a great week, and go Raiders. Thank you.
All right, Gen X Raiders call. A little dated, but we wanted to make sure we get it on because you guys call in. By the way, call in. Make sure you leave your messages by Tuesday evening, and then do it right after the game on Sunday. That's your best chances of getting on and having the call be as fresh as possible. Mo, talk a little bit about that. I think, listen, with the quarterback stuff behind, but the Caillou Blue Kelly with the hamstring injury is certainly concerning.
Concerning because, and kind of a blow because he hadn't been playing well ever since he had that 3 interception practice a few Tuesdays ago. Played well in the preseason, got some time in the slot, that versatility. I felt like he could really contribute. I know he hasn't had much playing experience in Baltimore when they drafted him out of, I believe, the 5th round, but I felt like he could fill some holes if needed. We'll see. It doesn't sound like the hamstring injury is serious, but we'll monitor it and see.
Yeah.
But he nailed a lot of the points that we talked about early. My concern is with the depth across the roster in general, specifically though. The secondary, you got a young offense, so those guys are going to get some playing time and experience, which is a good thing. But the defensive depth is very, very concerning, specifically in the secondary.
Absolutely. Had to pause for radio edit. All right, Gen X Raider, thanks for the call, man. We appreciate it. All right, moving on. Now we got our buddy Terrick in Chicago. Terrick, of course, calls almost every show, unless he's really, really busy. So let's get to, and you know what? I got to give Terrick credit because he has up to 3 minutes to leave his message, Mo. But Terrick just dives right in. He knows exactly what he's going to say, and he does it in about 2 minutes. So it's a good example out there. Here we go. Here's Terrick in Chicago.
Hello, Scott and Mo. What's going on, guys? This is Terrick checking in with you guys from the Windy City. Just want to talk a lot about the Raiders news over the past maybe 48 hours. Kenny Pickett, did not see that one coming, but I can already say with certainty that is a major upgrade from AOC. I believe there's going to be some type of an injury settlement, and they need to move on from AOC. I just kind of regard him as an unathletic tortoise. He is who he is, and everyone's like, oh, we have a great backup. No, we don't. He is who he is. He's not going to get any better. So maybe they're going to keep him and keep Pickett, Geno Smith, and AOC on the roster, because we did get rid of Cam Miller. That did surprise me as far as cuts were concerned. Amari Cooper, I was surprised to see him come back, or number 4 overall pick of the draft. I want to say 9 years ago. Definitely a shell of who he once was, but I do think he is serviceable for maybe some impact plays here and there. He's still a hell of a route runner, doesn't block at all. And I'm really, really disappointed that Jakobi Meyers has not received a new contract. I don't know what the details are there. Maybe he wants far more than maybe he's worth, because he is not a number 1 receiver. I was surprised to see Sincere McCormick get cut. I guess they're rolling with Zamir White, Mozart, and obviously Genty. Maybe Lauby made it because of his performance on maybe special teams. But it's definitely an interesting turn of events. I didn't see some of these things happening, which makes it all exciting. I wonder if the Raiders are done making moves. I think they're going to raid other teams, monitor who else has been released throughout the league. And I'm still surprised Justin Simmons is out there, unless I'm mistaken. Definitely looking forward to your guys' thoughts regarding a lot of these major moves. Have a great week. Talk to you guys later. Go Raiders. Bye-bye.
Terrick, thanks for the call as always. Mo, I was not surprised by Sincere McCormick because I think he's pretty one-dimensional and he doesn't help on special teams. So I think Terrick's right there on his assessment of why Lauby won over McCormick.
Yeah, that was one of my takes on Bleacher Report, on the Bleacher Report app for my segment. Is that was pretty easy to explain. Is Lauby gives you more as a pass catcher and on special teams, which is what you're looking for out of a reserve running back, and as your 4th running back, you got to contribute on special teams. If you're not one of the top two guys, you got to play in that 3rd phase. And Sincere McCormick just doesn't have the production or have the experience there that Dylan Lauby has. So that didn't shock me at all. I will say though, with this roster, the construction of it, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't have a lot of surprises, and technically that's a good thing, because that means you didn't let go of a lot of players that you felt like, oh, that guy is going to make a tremendous impact early, exactly. Right? You see some teams like, oh, some stars, and I saw some fan bases pulling out their hair because, oh, that guy could have started for us and got 50 tackles or 700 yards or whatever. The Raiders, for the most part, I think they made mostly the right decisions on their cuts. Because obviously we'll see what happened, because remember, this is the initial roster. This isn't the final roster. Correct. Changes are going to happen. Really quick, though, as far as Amari Cooper is concerned, I still think he can get you about 600-700 yards and a handful of touchdowns, and that's what you want out of a player who's going to be rotating in potentially with Dante Thornton Jr.
Yeah, and again, I think there's upside there, Mo. I mean, you say rotating in, but I think he could end up playing more than we think he does if he stays healthy, of course. But hey, 10-year player, 10,000 yards receiving. That averages. I know he had a couple down years with the Raiders. He had a down year, obviously, last year with the injury. Still, and Terrick pointed out too, the route running still good, and you got to hope that he clicks. Now, again, the Raiders are hoping on him. They're hoping on some other guys like Jamal Adams to refine themselves and perform at a level that they used to. And if it works out, it works out. Will they all work out? Probably not each single one of them. If they all work out, then things are going to be much better. You talk about Devin White, and you talk about Adams, and you talk about Cooper and some other guys. So we'll see how it goes down. But great call, Terrick. All right, we're going to close out the show now with a call from our butter. Boy, I guess I'm wanting some toast or something. From our buddy, Raider Dougie. Here's Raider Dougie.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. This is Raider Dougie out here in Central Cali. I'm just calling in because a lot happened yesterday with the Raiders, and I wanted to put my 2 cents on it. I know the fans divided in all these decisions. First off, the Kenny Pickett trade. I'm not sure what the hate is. I understand, Kenny Pickett isn't a sexy name, but you got to consider, the options that were out there, and consider, Kenny Pickett is still young but has a lot of starts under his belt. With this coaching staff, they probably see a lot in him, especially with some Eagles former, upper management that worked with him last year. I believe Kenny Pickett had a really good game in Week 17 with the Eagles. I thought he looked really good. I know he got injured, I think, towards the fourth quarter, but he is 2-0 against the Raiders. Has a lot of starts, and again, we're asking him to be a backup. And the biggest argument that I hate hearing about backups is, hey, well, if the QB1 goes down, then the season's over anyway. We got to stop looking at it from that lens. But we have to look at it as, okay, if we lose our quarterback for, let's say, 4 games, can our backup quarterback win us 2 games? If it's 3 games, can he win us 2 games, 3 games, right? You want to look at it from a temporary injury standpoint.
Right.
We see quarterbacks in the league go down for just a few games, and we've seen their backups kind of hold the fort by winning a few games. So that's the kind of mindset a lot of people need to have, because everyone's just like, oh, why does it matter? When the quarterback one goes down, then the season's over. You got to look at it from a temporary standpoint. That's a fact if they're out for the season, but that's not always the case. So just want to throw that out there. Amari Cooper, not a big fan of Amari Cooper for a lot of reasons. He kind of gave up on the team, gives up on plays, has one of the worst drops percentages in the league. But yeah, he's a Raider. He's back. We'll embrace him, and hopefully he does well. I'll root for the guy, but not a fan of him. But hey, it brightens the room. And lastly, the Jakobi Meyers ordeal. I'm not a big fan of not paying him. I get it. He's not the superstar number 1 wide receiver, but he's our number 1 wide receiver right now. Now, if he's asking for top-tier money, then, obviously you have to trade him, because that's just not happening. But I don't see why you can't give the man, 18 to 20 million a year. He deserves it. So hopefully they get that done, and not that Amari Cooper is the replacement, because he will not be a good replacement for Jakobi Meyers. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah.
All right, there you go. Dougie got cut off there, man. Sorry. But I'll pick up with the last point, Mo, with the Jakobi Meyers thing, because I think you'll see, in essence, maybe if they give him an extension, fine. If not, at the very least, what you do is what the Bengals did with Trey Hendrickson. They doubled his salary for this year, but he's still going to be a free agent next year. They didn't sign him to an extension. They just gave him a nice hefty raise, more guaranteed money, because that's obviously what NFL players are concerned with. But if you look at, he talked about, Dougie said, if you give him 20 million for the year, you look at the players in the 20 million range: Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, Cortland Sutton, McLaren, Michael Pittman, Deebo Samuel, Nico Collins, and up to T. Higgins at 28 million. Do you see, look, I think you do that. I think you, at the very least, you give him a nice raise. And I think 25 million over 2 seasons would be fine, or 30 over 2 seasons, which is basically what he got last time. I don't agree with paying him $20 million for a year. I don't think he's worth it.
I think that's what he's going to get, though, eventually, simply because of
the market.
When he's getting paid in the market, he's getting 11 million right now, and I would say he's more along the lines of maybe a Christian Kirk, who I think is a little below 20 million. But again, because of when he's getting paid at this point,
yes,
what he's asking for coming off of his best year, he's going to get more than 20 million, in my opinion. Now, look at Deebo Samuel. He's at 23. Deebo Samuel's a wide receiver 2, clearly.
Yeah.
He's not even a team's wide receiver 1, because now he's in Washington behind Terry McLaurin. When he was in San Francisco, he wasn't their best receiver. He had one really good year, and he's making about 23 million a year right now. So it just depends on when you get paid and when you strike and when you ask for that contract. And good on Jakobi Meyers' representation for asking for it after his best year. But I still think that the Raiders are going to wind up keeping Jakobi Meyers. They rejected a trade offer from a team, according to Adam Schefter, who's on the Pat McAfee show. said the team wanted Jakobi Meyers, but also wanted the Raiders to pay a portion of his salary, and the Raiders weren't willing to do that. They've also been, through reporters, insiders, saying that they have no intention in trading Jakobi Meyers. So I do think that they retain Jakobi. I think they should retain Jakobi because, as some of our callers have said, Amari Cooper is not a direct replacement for Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers is an inside-outside wide receiver who blocks very well. Amari Cooper is not that. He's going to give you the production on the outside. He's not a strong blocker on the outside. That's not his game. You want to have, I think if you're the Raiders with question marks on your defense, you want to have a high-octane offense, and you do that by adding depth, veteran depth, Amari Cooper, having young players, Dante Thornton Jr., Trey Tucker. Keep all those guys because you're going to need to score a lot of points this year.
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to be that guy. But you're right about the market. That's why a 2-year deal at $25 a year with only the first year, this year guaranteed, that allows him to get to more than double his pay from last year, his current contract, and then it gives him the opportunity to earn the option for next year, and then it turns into $50 million, right? So we'll see where they go with that, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. But I do think the Raiders get something done with him because it's late in the process for everybody, and I think there's a desire there. The Raiders could have gotten him cheaper, frankly, if they would have done a deal earlier. I don't know what happened there, but we'll hopefully find out as the story unfolds. All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Also, of course, you're listening to us on 101.5 KDON and KXNT in Las Vegas. Mo, man, we'll see what happens the rest of this week and moving up to week 1. So we'll be back on Tuesday, and we'll talk about roster moves and what else we've seen from the Raiders because they're coming for sure.
Absolutely, Scott. Buckle up. It's going to be a ride. We finally made it. Football's around the corner. Excited to see what the Raiders are going to be this year. I know a lot of people have given me a lot of pushback on my prediction, but nonetheless, I am excited for the Raiders season. More so for the offense than the defense because I dread what that defense is going to look like against some pretty high-powered offenses. But I want to see what Chip Kelly does with some of these young guys and Geno Smith.
Me too. Can't wait. We got it next weekend. It's going to be fun. All right, do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. If you're watching us on video, like us there as well. Subscribe there. Hit that notifications bell so you know when we have a new one. We'll have a lot more videos come up. Exciting new sponsor to talk about next week. Our title sponsor for the season. Really hyped about this one. So be prepared for that as well. And we will be back on Tuesday on the podcast side. Of course, next week, we are in our full rate of schedule, our full schedule, season schedule, that is, with shows and post game next week as well, myself and Murph. So get ready for that. And don't forget to help out and subscribe wherever you get the show. All right. For Mo Moton, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black today. Thanks to our producer at Odyssey, Mr. Mike Robier, and our producer on the radio in Las Vegas, Mr. Mark Bonilla. Raider Nation, have a great weekend. We will talk to you next week.